Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I just want to acknowledge that we are gathered on Treaty 6 territory, and I'd like to acknowledge the Métis people who share a deep connection with this land. We're here this morning because for months now, the Premier has been playing a very dangerous game. While saying she doesn't want separatism, she's been creating the conditions for an unnecessary referendum to be held on Alberta leaving Canada. And she admits the only reason she did so is to try and keep herself in power. Well, we now know the Premier has lost control of this desperate strategy to distract Albertans from her government's chaos, cuts, corruption, and cruelty. And we now have proof her government is made up of separatists. On June 25th, 5 UCP constituency associations are sponsoring a fundraiser that will pander to separatists. But it's worse than that. Energy and Minerals Minister Brian Jean is a confirmed speaker at the event. That's a cabinet minister from Danielle Smith's government using this event as a platform to spread separatist rhetoric. He wouldn't be there without the explicit permission of the Premier. It's wildly inappropriate for a cabinet minister to be billed and speaking at such a partisan event. Another attendee of this event is the head of the so-called Alberta Prosperity Project, the group that filed a referendum question with Elections Alberta that asks if Alberta should cease to be a province of Canada. It is completely unacceptable that the UCP and a government minister are now conspiring with separatists. Because of their snuggling up to those hell-bent on destroying our country, serious harm is being done to our economy, to job prospects, especially for younger Albertans, and to Albertans' cost of living. Talk of separation always leads to investment uncertainty, which means projects are put on hold or cancelled. Alberta jobs are being lost. Unemployment rates are rising, and Alberta wages continue to stagnate, all due to the harm this separation talk brings to our economy. And there's something even more sinister at play between the UCP and the separatists that they're cozying up to. But I'm going to turn over things to my colleague, Kasawski, to explain.
Thanks, Christina. I just want to quickly give you a better idea of who the UCP government is aligning itself with. The Premier and her government have been fooling around with separatism, and it's Albertans' time, and it's time Albertans have found out what's going on. Well, it's bad enough that this event is organized and endorsed by UCP constituencies and a government minister. Other speakers at this event include the authors of the Alberta Declaration of Independence and A Time to Leave, Canada Cannot Be Fixed. Far from a courageous conversation, this event is an indoctrination to the separatist way of thinking. A way of thinking that embraces intolerance. Just a few weeks ago, a similar event happened in my own riding, stoking extremist ideas of separatism. It's incredibly upsetting to see the group gathering behind the UCP to promote this anti-Canadian perspective. One of the main proponents of the Alberta Prosperity Project is Jeffrey Rath, who's had to say a couple of things publicly about separation. And just last Tuesday on X, Rath said an independent Alberta would budget $1 billion for immigration and deportation. $100 million for immigration and $900 million to deport people they don't think deserve to be in Alberta. To me, this is not the Alberta I know, the Alberta I'm proud of, the Alberta that welcomes everyone, the Alberta that makes sure we are the best province for the people to choose to live, the best province in the best country in the world. We can't strengthen our province when the Premier and this UCP government don't seem to understand what Albertans are afraid of, that history will repeat itself here in our province if we dance with separatist ideas, a loss of industry investment, a mass exodus of corporate headquarters, a huge reduction in job prospects, instead of focusing on the government's business of growing our province and creating opportunities for Albertans. The UCP is focused on compromising our province's future for generations to come. The UCP and Brian Jean's active organization of this event mean the UCP can no longer hide. They are conspiring with separatists and extremists. The UCP didn't campaign for separation and mass deportations. The UCP does not have a mandate to destroy Canada or to apply policies like mass deportations. This should not be the agenda of Alberta's government. Brian Jean and the UCP must cancel this event. They need to stop cozying up with separatists, which they are doing to raise their political funds and to distract from their disastrous record on jobs, the economy, and our cost of living in Alberta. If they don't, then Jean Smith and the entire UCP government are admitting what they are, a party hell-bent on destroying Alberta in a grossly intolerant, irresponsible attempt to save their grasp on power. I, for one, am a proud Canadian and want Alberta to lead Canada. We're now happy to answer any questions you might have.
All right, everyone, thank you very much for joining us. If you are joining us online via Zoom, again, all you have to do is use the raise hand function to get into the queue to ask a question. We're going to start in the room with Kasawski from Alberta Today.
Yes, good morning. So the event listing says that the spirit of the Alberta Sovereignty Act, or Bill 1, is not of secession, but rather a declaration of intent to reshape this union, and that this concept is not new. So you did touch on it at the top, but what pushes this from sovereignty to secession or separation in your mind?
You know, I appreciate the question. I think we're playing with words here, trying to semantically differentiate between secession and sovereignty. This group, the Prosperity Project, when they came to Sherwood Park, were challenged by the constituents of Sherwood Park because they were saying things that were outrageous and the people in the room were offended by it. So we have to remember that we have a government minister who's getting the permission of the Premier to endorse an event and attend an event where separation is being discussed. And as an experienced elected representative who's been a member of Parliament, who's been a leader of a party that ran for Premier, and who's been a long-time serving member of the Legislative Assembly, he knows his attendance to this event is representative of support for separation.
And I'm wondering, so the federal government tabled its One Canadian Economy bill. I'm wondering what sorts of things do we need to see from the federal government to address some of those who may have concerns about Alberta's place in federation, but maybe aren't on that separatist side?
So I'll maybe pass over to Christina, but I will just say one of the things I appreciated the Prime Minister said is that he said the approach from the federal government now, when a large project is being proposed, is they're going to start asking how can they help get it built. And I think that's an important differentiation and a new direction from the federal government that I appreciate as an Albertan.
Yeah, we have a new federal government that has shown a real interest and willingness to talk about major projects, to work with provinces as partners. What we need is a premier who's willing to come to the table, to have those conversations, to find common ground. Instead of finding common ground, instead of coming together to get things built, we see a premier who continues to use divisive rhetoric, who continues to threaten our Canada and how we operate, and who has government ministers attending a separatist partisan gathering to egg on this agenda of separating Alberta from Canada. So very frustrating when there is a moment of opportunity for our province to see the government going in entirely the wrong direction.
We're going to go to online now and Zoom, and Sean Amato from City News.
Last weekend, the Premier was on CTV and said that Albertans have the lowest living standards in the world. Just wondering if you care to comment on that.
Oh, Sean. When I heard the Premier had been on a national program and said that, I honestly did a bit of a spit take. It is a ridiculous statement for her to have made. And it's a continued pattern of Danielle Smith is our Premier, but also Conservatives talking down our province and our country in a desperate attempt to try and make their worldview have any form of reality. It was a ridiculous statement for her to make. It is patently not true, but also The person making that statement is the premier of our province, of a party that has been in power for 6 years, who is responsible for the current economic conditions here, which include the highest youth unemployment in the country, the highest unemployment in Western Canada, that includes a healthcare system that is being torn apart and restructured in a way that doesn't need to be. We could have the best healthcare system in the country. We have the best healthcare workers. We could have the best education for our kids. Instead, we pay the lowest per student of anywhere in Canada. So, apologies. The statement was very, very concerning to hear from our premier because she is using it to try and justify actions that Albertans do not support and that she and her government did not run on.
Follow-up, Sean?
Yes, please. So I was in Saskatoon last week where the premier was meeting with other premiers and the prime minister, and actually was kind of surprised how she said that she was encouraged. She's willing to work with the premiers. She left with a lot of positive statements about that meeting. So I'm just wondering what you make of some of the conflicting statements here that is coming from the premier's office and from the party. I mean, we know that roughly half of her party is at least interested in separation. So yeah. I'm just wondering what you make of the mixed messaging where in some cases she says that she's quite happy with Canada, willing to work with Canada, and then we get other statements like, we have the lowest living standards in the world.
No, and the idea that the premier and the premier's office is swinging from one side to the other, sending out mixed messages in a way that is confusing and undermines their overall goals is just entirely accurate. We saw that even in the legislature, introducing legislation to make it easier for a separatist referendum, and then saying, but we're not here to endorse separatism when they are literally facilitating it. The fact that the Premier and the UCP government is trying at one hand to talk to a separatist base that they desperately want to hang on to. They're worried about the Alberta Republican Party and other political parties popping up. And on the other, trying to make the case to Canadians and to Albertans that they believe in a united Canada. It doesn't make sense, and I think Albertans are getting that experience of wondering what is she going to say next because it's so inconsistent from one day to the next. Just turn to see if Kyle has anything to add to that.
Yeah, Sean, and I'll just say, when we have these statements coming from the premier that oppose their intent, it's clear that she is pandering to an extreme group of her party because, like we saw, she was very pro-Canada when she was surrounded by a group of premiers, and then she left that Saskatoon and made statements that were the opposite of what she said when she was in the presence of the other First Ministers.
Okay, everyone, thank you very much. Seeing no more questions online, that concludes this news conference. Mind how you go.